Module 3, Lesson 3's objective is to multiply and divide familiar facts using a letter to represent the unknown. Item 3. Pedro buys 4 books at the fair for $7 each. What is the total amount Pedro spends on 4 books? Use the letter B to represent the total amount Pedro spends and then solve the problem. I'll go ahead and underline the key details. Pedro buys 4 books, $7 each. Now I'll highlight the question. What is the total amount Pedro spends on 4 books? I think I'll go ahead and circle 4 books to remind myself the key detail of 4 books being in the question. Now I'll underline the directions to use the letter B to represent the total amount Pedro spends. And then solve the problem. Now I know what I'm being asked to do. I think the best way for me to solve this problem would be to use a tape diagram. If each book that Pedro buys is $7, I need to label each part of the tape diagram with $7. I need to look back in the story to find out how many sections are in the tape diagram. I can see that Pedro buys 4 books, so I will make sure that there are 4 sections. Each of those sections has to be labeled with $7 because each of those sections represents a book that Pedro buys. Now, I need to use the letter B to represent the total amount that Pedro spends. So I'll go ahead and draw a little bracket right here. And I'll put a B here. That B will represent the unknown number. That's the total amount that Pedro spends on books. Now I will write an equation to help me solve the problem. That looks like 4 groups of $7 equals B. 4 times $7 equals B. Now I will solve it. 7 plus 7 is 14. I'll put a dollar sign there too. And here's another one. 7 plus 7 is 14. Adding doubles is easy. Now I'll take those two 14s and add them together. $14 plus $14 . Four ones plus 4 ones is 8 ones. 110 plus 110 is 2 tens. There's my dollar sign. So 4 times $7 is B, or 4 groups of $7 is B. And we know that B equals $28. Now we have to answer the question in words. What is the total amount Pedro spends on 4 books? Pedro spends $28 on 4 books. Whenever there's a word problem, we remember to read, Underline the key information, highlight the question, then we draw. Drawing could be a picture or an equation that is written, and then we write. That means we answer the question in words. Read, draw, write. That's the strategy we use for solving word problems. Item B. Pedro hands the cashier 3 $10 bills. How much change will he receive? Write an equation to solve. Use the letter C to represent the unknown. Now I will underline the key details. Pedro hands the cashier 3 $10 bills. I will highlight the question, how much change will he receive? If you don't have a highlighter, you can use a yellow crayon or simply circle the question. And then we need to write an equation. And we need to use the letter C to represent the unknown. Above, we already figured out how much Pedro spent on those 4 books. We figured out that Pedro spent $28. Now it's time for him to pay the cashier. He paid the cashier with 3 $10 bills. So I will go ahead and draw a tape diagram to show how much he gave the cashier. 3 $10 bills means this tape diagram needs 3 sections. And in each section I'll put $10 because the story tells us Pedro used 3 $10 bills to pay the cashier. Now, I will go ahead and add up how much he paid the cashier. That's 10 plus 10 plus 10. Or I could multiply 3 groups of $10. 10 plus 10 is 20. Plus this 10 is 30. So 3 groups of 10 is $30. Now I take the amount he handed the cashier, $30. I have to subtract the amount that the books cost, which is $28. And 30 minus 28 is C, because the directions say that we need to use the letter C to represent the unknown. And C is how much change he will receive. So if I have $30 and I take 28 away, the amount of change, or C, that I get back, or in this case, Pedro gets back, is $2. Now I must answer the question, how much change will he receive? He will receive $2 in change. As you can see, I've used the same strategy in 3B as I used in 3A. I read, drew, and wrote in order to solve this problem. Number 4. On field day, the first grade dash is 25 meters long. The third grade dash is twice the distance of the first grade dash. How long is the third grade dash? Use a letter to represent the unknown and solve. I'll go ahead and underline the key details. The first grade dash is 25 meters long. The third grade dash is twice the distance of the first grade dash. Now I'll highlight the question. how long is the third grade dash? And I'll underline, use a letter to represent the unknown and solve. This time they let me pick the letter that I want to use to represent the unknown and solve. Let's use a tape diagram again. If the first grade dash is 25 meters long and the third grade dash is twice that amount, twice means 2. So I will go ahead and make 2 sections in this tape diagram. In the first section, I'll put 25 meters with a little m to stand for meters. And that's for the first grade dash. And since the third grade dash is twice as long, I have to put another 25 meters. Now, M is not representing an unknown. M is the abbreviation for meters. But if I go ahead and make this bracket just like I did in item A, I know that if I combine the two 25-meter sections of the tape diagram, I will get the unknown. I think I'll use a D